Leading economic indicator for the month of June was not good. The third time it's dropped in the last 4 months, the largest drop that we've recorded since October of 2008. And I remember that was Lehman Brothers. That was the month, well actually Lehman failed in September, but right after Lehman Brothers failed. So this was not a good report. The index was still above growth neutral, but this trend that we're on right now is not good. And of course, some of that's related to floods in this part of the country. Of course, the Missouri flooding its banks, and that's affecting many states in this part of the country.
Speaking of, I mean, it does start in North Dakota and goes all the way south through Missouri, so it has to have a wide impact.
It does, Cindy, and we had about 26% of the companies reported that they were feeling either a modest impacts or minor impacts, but at least 26% of the companies, either through supply deliveries to their companies or their sales, were affected. Now, not a large impact, but still modest impacts, and that's having, of course, this is having spillover effects across the region for states, and so this is, I'm looking for the national numbers that come out today, later on after you and I talk. The national numbers will come out, and they are not going to be good in my judgment. In other words, this economy, now as we see it, is the likelihood of a double-dip recession, the probability there has now increased fairly significantly. I still don't think it's above 50%, but we're approaching 50%, so I'm very concerned. And then we'll know about the job numbers later on in the month as the Bureau of Labor Statistics reports their numbers. I don't think they're going to be good either. So this economy, we are seeing some fairly significant and negative impacts. And of course, some of this is related to some of the international tensions, which are being telegraphed back to Nebraska, back to North Dakota, Minnesota. The list is long. Individuals, businesses, farms out there, they are seeing some impacts from what's going on in Greece, for example.
What about the confidence index? That had to take a dive.
Boy, Cindy, it took a huge dive, and we asked the business leaders, these supply managers, I should say, and business leaders, about looking forward 6 months, and their confidence is dragging, is not doing, it's waning. And I have to say, we've got to see some changes coming soon. Changes coming soon. And one of the two changes I would look for going forward is the settlement of the problems in Greece. The way it affects the U.S. and this part of the country is individuals sell Greek bonds. They then buy U.S. bonds. That drives the value of the dollar up. Well, it brings U.S. interest rates down, which normally thought to be a good, but the problem is it pushes down agricultural commodity prices. It makes the U.S. less competitive abroad as the dollar increases in value. So that's the linkage right now. That linkage is not good. It also, of course, makes everybody less optimistic, makes everybody pull back on their spending, their investing, so it's all comes together. And the second issue, of course, is the U.S. debt situation. The failure, at least at this point in time, of both the Congress, the Senate, the President, the administration to come together on raising the debt ceiling. Got to see that come, at least see some reconciliation there and see that settle fairly soon.
So even imports and exports, particularly exports, had to be impacted as well.
Well, you're hitting right on the point, Cindy. Those were not good. Still above growth neutral, but export orders looking more negative, and of course that's not good. Of course, we sort of expected it because the dollar is rebounding here, making U.S. goods less competitively priced abroad. So that's some of the impacts. Of course, oil prices now we're seeing coming off of some of the highs, but that's because the dollar is strengthening, and that's having some negative impacts in some parts. Oklahoma, for example, North Dakota, for example, and again, for this part of the country, the floods. And we will not know for several months how the floods are going to affect the businesses that we survey and how much of that sticks to us in terms of long-term impacts.
So employment, not looking good?
Not good, Cindy. It's still above growth neutral. All our indices were above growth neutral. Now again, each of the indices is from 0 to 100. 50 is growth neutral. All of them were above growth neutral, but employment was only slightly above growth neutral. So there's more hiring than layoffs, but boy, that's not enough. We need to see some significant hiring going on for the businesses out there in the 9-state region that we survey. And of course, looking at even on prices, our price gauge, Cindy, dropped. And it dropped, now it's still in the high range, but we're seeing that. Of course, ordinarily I would say that's good news, but perhaps the reason we're seeing the drops is not good news. That is, again, a rebounding value of the dollar, which is really being telegraphed to the businesses back here, lowering exports, making our goods less competitively priced abroad. So that's, again, a negative.
What else? What are you hearing from the supply managers?
They're just not optimistic, of course. Their optimism is waning every month. This malaise that we're in, this, although we economists keep saying this we're in a recovery. Just believe us, folks. Believe us, it's a recovery. And the businesses, the folks are saying, you economists are full of it. This is not a rebound. And they're right. The rebound is not anything to write home about. We're sort of bumping along the bottom. And I guess to add to the other two factors that I identified earlier, which were, again, the Greece situation in Greece and Europe, the situation in raising the debt ceiling, and third is the housing. The housing is just looking lousy out there. It is still seeing some of the worst housing numbers that we've seen in the last 50 years. I mean, this is a remarkable housing situation. And how long is it going to take to come back, bring those jobs back? It's going to take several years to bring those, get back in terms of the housing downturn. And that is taking a heck of a lot of the wind out of the sails of the economy.
Anything else?
Well, I think, Cindy, the inventories, cutting back on, not cutting back, but the growth in inventories coming down because companies are having a difficult time with inventory management because they're trying to plan around the floods. They're trying to plan around what's going on in Japan or what has been going on in Japan with the earthquake and the subsequent tsunami, making it more difficult to get some of these inputs, the supplies that they need to either for their production processes. That's been a tough situation. And of course, others, it's not just the floods. We had tornadoes, a huge impact in Missouri, of course, certain parts of Missouri. And that's Joplin, for example. And that ripples across the state and that area of our region. Now, of course, when the rebuilding begins in Joplin and some of the rebuilding begins for some of the flooded areas, there's going to be some positive impacts, but it's hard to feel good about these sorts of positive impacts. That's no way to be growing the economy.